In the last video help, we were working on social media and the popover. And you can see as we recall here, we were setting in different social media sheets as far as screens are concerned. Let's go over and look at now what we're going to do as far as My Internet. My Internet looks very similar, but in this particular case, what we're doing at the purpose of this is that there are many websites that may be your choices that you use the most often, and you want to have them in a very quick access, but you don't have to find the URL or look on a listing somewhere or whatever to find that URL that you may have forgotten. What this does is it allows you to put internet records in here, and you can go ahead and once you create them in here, they are live as far as being able to use them. So for example, it's creating the record in the portal as soon as you actually add it here. And of course, when you go to the portal, we don't need to put this in anymore because it's coming from this data where you're adding it. So it's kind of really fast. So if I view it in the portal, and in this case, I'm going to go to that particular thing. Like I'm going to go to Foxtail, Facebook, or Wikibuy. In this case, I'm going to go to Wikibuy. And what it does is when I go to that screen, it's going to go ahead and bring in the long URL, and it's going to bring up this particular screen. Now, what I want to point out is in a lot of these cases, you have to be aware that if you're on a device where you've gone in and signed in before, and you want to go in here, it may or may not sign you in. So what you want to do is go ahead and make sure that you have something that you've written down in what the different URLs are. Well, that's what it does for you. If you have the screen back on the navigation over here, you can add things to the description down here. So you can put in the site information, and you can have your username and password if you want to add it in here. It's not going to hurt anything to add it there. If you're going to forget it and you can't remember it, you've got plenty of space to add it in here. And watch how fast this is. If I go to Facebook, it's pretty darn fast loading. And of course, as I say that, it's not going to load fast, but nevertheless, it actually does load very quickly. In the case of Facebook, it does take quite a jump to get there. Now, of course, you can go ahead and log in, and if you've logged in prior to that, it may retain your login, and you can go ahead and pop back in. And for a better experience, it says update the browser. You can go ahead and do that in here. It actually allows you to do updates and stuff like that, so if you click on it, it's actually going to update it. I didn't do it for this application because I wanted to give people their option to go ahead and pick that and do it by themselves. Let's navigate back. I'm going to go back to the main screen. I want to point out one thing though. When you're in here looking at this, you'll see that the internet has only the portal. It has a popover which creates the record, but only the portal record. There is no list view because the portal itself, the popover and or the portal acts as the lookup. So you can see when you're scrolling down through, if you don't, or you're not able to find something because you have so many items in your records for the screen on the popover, you can also go over real fast to the popover, from the popover over to the main screen for the portal and do a fast find in there to find what you're looking for. Okay, let's daily planner is the next thing we're going to be looking at. Now, I'm going to explain the theory behind this. There are people that are project-oriented or have a business or doing activities that are beyond the scope of just the daily activity. And these are things that are going to be tracking quite a bit of information, and you want to be able to plan different things and have organizational things with each individual person that you're going to be working with in your company where you're citing different things, like, for example, a plan description, a plan topic, a plan set of requirements, plan deliverables if you're delivering items, plan action items, who you're actually going to do the actions and who's supposed to complete those actions, and plan action due dates. So for example, in this case, Bob Dorsey, you must have the schedule by the 20th in order to accomplish all the things in here. So this acts as a mini database for things that you're planning and scope of effort and people that are going to be doing the efforts and these looking at action items and accomplishing them. Now, if you go over here and scroll down, you can have each one of the individual next step, and there's a brand new record in there, and you can go ahead and click in there and add additional data to take you to that particular record for the next set of stuff that you're doing, as far as adding another set of requirements or whatever on a different date and a different time. Where you, say for example, you had another meeting and you wanted to track all the things that are going on in that meeting, you could do that and keep track of all those important things. If you go to the portal expands the fields and allows you to see the information a little easier, and you can obviously do finds in the portal. So for example, if you pick something in a certain field and you're looking for, say, a name or a task or whatever, you would do the do action, start the find, and then go into that particular set of things. Say, for example, there's a certain set of deliverables or action items or whatever that I'm looking for in some records, or maybe I want to find everything where action due dates or the person that's assigned. Say, I have Bob Smith and he's going to be doing a bunch of things. I want to find every record where he has an activity that he's got an assigned action item. So you can go in there and put the name in and then go ahead and perform the find and allow the information to come up. Now I'm on a Mac, so I'm just going to hit the return key, and then I'm going to say cancel this, and it's going to bring back the data. That's another way of getting out of the record without having to create some other kind of a way to get out of it. The same thing will occur on the iPad and iPhone, where you can jump out of it just by doing something like trying to navigate to another screen. By the way, just so you know this, if you do a search in the portal, that one portal record or the ones that have the same data in it are going to be the records in selection. So that means that if you're going to want to see all the data in the database and come back to a portal or a list view and you want to view all the data, you have to go to the do action screen over here, and you have to go down and say show all records in order to bring back all the data. Right now I'm in ID number 1, and I searched on ID number 1 because I got the data for it. But I could possibly have additional records. If I had looked for, say, John Smith or somebody, I might have 4 or 5 records to view instead of just 1. So what I'd have to do when I get done is to say show all records again, and it'll return all the records back to the selection of all the items in the database. So for example, if you went to a list view for the daily plan and there was a bunch of records were missing and only 1 was showing, what you want to do is go up to do action and come down and say show all records to bring all the records back into selection. Now when we get a few more records in there, and say for example we had 10 or 12 or 15 people in the current records in selection, and maybe I even did a search and came up with certain records that I was interested in having, and one I didn't want, I could click in a field in the record I want to omit, and then come down here and say omit the highlighted record. And what it would do is it would take it out of the list view and it would no longer be there. It would be out of the selection. But if I wanted to see all the records that were shown as omitted, I would do the reverse. I just go ahead and click this button, and what it'd do, it'd bring up all the records that were omitted. And that could be 1 to the number of records that you omitted. Now, why would you do that? Sometimes when you do a selection of records and you see the ones that are in there, maybe you got one that you really don't want in that group. Say, for example, you want to print the listing so you can have it for some purpose. Or maybe you want to create a PDF or a Excel spreadsheet. You could do that by doing export. And for example, we can export here and bring up the record, and it would ask you to pick the record you're going to export or name that record. In this particular case, I'm going to scroll this up here so you can see everything that I'm looking at. And then you would pick the type of export that you wanted to do. And in this case, comma delimited is separated is probably one of the best ones. Now, since I'm on the desktop, I can go ahead and click on Excel, or I can create a FileMaker Pro database. I would not use probably XML or HTML or merge files unless I wanted to go to a word processor and use Word or something like Microsoft Word to use the merge and parse it so that I could have the information I wanted. You can also do that with a comma separated or an Excel file. I like Excel a lot. I also like Tab a lot. Those are 2 of the most common ones used. So it would create a new named file, and then all you'd have to do is say save it, and it would produce the file with the data that you picked. Now, understand when you're exporting, there's going to be another screen that will come up. So if I said save it, I'm going to get another screen, and then I will go through picking the fields I wanted from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen, and then organize them in the order that I want them in. And I can go ahead and, for example, I'm just going to say, well, I can say untitled and say save. And then I'm going to get something that looks like this. And what I'll do is I'll just click on whatever I want over there and add them in the order that I want them in. And in this particular case, I want name. Now I may want to change that. I want a name up front. So I'll work it up there so that it's number one in there. And in some cases, you can actually sort by a grouping. And there's reasons for doing that, reason for not doing it. You can just play with it to see how it works. Unicode, you have the choice down here, and you also have Macintosh. Now that's, if I'm on a Mac, I tend to use the Mac instead of UTF-8. But in this particular case, it doesn't make a lot of difference as far as what I'm doing working. So I'd say export, and as soon as I say export, I'm going to get a tab eliminated file. I'm going to pull it over here so you can see it. A tab eliminated file that I can use, and it'll have the data for it. And in this particular case, I could double click on it and open it to see the data. And it's going to bring up a tab file. This document is untitled. Could you open? Yes, numbers. Now numbers is going to open the file in this particular case. And maybe you could use it or not use it. It would be your choice to say no or yes, or open it actually from, say for example, go to a word processor and open that untitled file. Okay, so that's probably the other way that's actually better, because then you're using the application you want to be able to open the file that you want to. So for example, I wanted Excel, I could open it in numbers, or I could just take the tab file and bring it into word processor. Okay, let's navigate back to the main screen. We've looked at the internet, we looked at the daily planner. Let's go back and look a little bit at the data that shows in here. You can see it has the topics and everything that we looked at. So they're all here, only expanded in the portal itself. The next one is the travel track, very similar to the rest of the pop-ups, and obviously you got multiple records that you could add. In this particular case, I want to point out that there's a top of the file, and there's another thing called the expense portal as part of the screen. So if I go to the travel portal itself, I have the option to look at the travel portal and the expenses, or go to just the expenses for this record. And I'll point out how to do that. If you put in your, for example, I have the information in this screen for reservations and reservations made. So I would list the places that I want to have a reservation. So if you have somebody doing it for you, like a secretary, she can come in and also edit this to show that she actually got the reservations for you. If you have an iPad, which is really nice, you can just hand her the iPad and she can add all the data for you as far as the reservations and so forth. Let's go look at the travel portal. In the travel portal, you're going to have the top side, which is the travel that we just saw in there, and then also the individual row by row of all of your expenditures. This is not a live field, it's the ID for that particular travel. And as we do, for example, you saw those scrolling records. If I click in one in the portal for that particular record, it's going to come over to a record where the data is for that particular travel that I want on. So in this case, I could go in here and I could add the expense location, the expense date, the expense type, and in this particular case, type is your option to add whatever you want. And this is, you can add the date. Now, I have a live one that I updated that actually has a drop down that you can put in this. Now you can, if you have like this, if you click back into it, you can put a date range. And the way you do that is you put the greater than or equal sign in front of the date. Then you put a less than or equal to sign on the other side of it and put another date. And what it'll do is it'll find everything in the date range. Now you can't do that on this screen, so you go to the portal to do that. So that data that you're putting in there, you click one more time and then put that little formula in there. It'll find all the records. And if you, additionally, if you put in there travel expense 1 or something to that effect, so everything within expense 1 for that date range would be then the records in selection. And I go to my navigation, I go down to my travel track list view, and then everything would be shown in here. Now what I want to point out in the list view on this one is really clever. It has the Washington DC business trip on this date. I can now see the travel itinerary as far as leaving and going, as far as the flights and all that kind of stuff, where they're going to. And then I can pop up the expense and show the expenses. And guess what? You can edit them from here. So if I wanted to, I could go ahead and click in and make an addition or a deletion from this screen for information that is required. Maybe I had a quantity error and I came back and added a different quantity or a different price. and then it summarizes down at the bottom of the screen. And that's what the expense screen itself does, is have a separate thing like this. Now, I've tested this and it works beautifully on the iPhone and obviously on the iPad. So let's go ahead and go back to the portal view and notice that it does have the summary for the line expense in here line by line, and it has the quantity and the cost count. Let's go back and try to navigate down again. What we're going to do is go back to the manager main screen and the travel expense. And you could go back in, for example, and modify things here, and they'll update in that other record. Let's go to the next two things that are kind of quick to go through. The photo library. And basically what the photo library does is it allows you to add and edit information by adding photos in here and then adding the information about that particular event or thing. In this particular case, I'm going to go in and take a look at this one and say I want to see the portal photo. And what's really nice, it has a nice high quality image in here. You can also, if you're clicking on it, you can insert a picture. Now it's a little different on the iPad and iPhone. You would have to go out to the picture scroller or whatever they call it and pick them from there and insert them. It gives you a dialog that comes up to allow you to do that, just like this one does. And you can export for this on the desktop, or you can insert a file in here. Now, inserting a file is usually a PDF. And you can have a multiple page PDF at the same way. It's pretty nice that it works that way. So you have enough area to read it as well in here if you want to see it. Date of the time and the thing are the only three fields that you have to worry about. So if you wanted to do a find on it and you wanted to find a specific day or date range, or you knew the name of it, you could put it in there, or you could say the location for everything. For example, I want to see everything from Prescott. I could put a search in there and type in Prescott. It'll find all the things for Prescott if it was a number of different records. And then you can go back by navigating to the photo library list view. And then you would see each one of the items that you did in the current selection. And wow, look at here. I can click and see those items that were in those particular photos. It makes it really easy to go back in and find things. And of course, if I did a search and I did it by the individual field and I was looking for Halloween pictures and I had several of them, it would all those would come up, and then I can view the pictures for those. And I could also jump back into the portal to see it as a large view. Very similar to that, let's go back into the main and look at maps. Now with maps, what you're going to be able to do is create a map in the portal when you do it. But you can set up a map, for example, and this I'm going to put in the critical information for the location by address, city, and province or state, and the zip code. Then when I click on map, it's going to look that up on the map. So let's go ahead and click it. And you'll see the corresponding information that's looking in here. Now, in a few of these screens, instead of having the pop over and stuff in the screen, I put the Daily Manager main and take you back to the particular screen for the manager. The reason for that is that on the iPhone and some devices, the screen gets caught behind the item that's up here, and you can't see where you can navigate to it. And of course, it does everything just like you would if you were in the maps. And this is Google Maps, so I like Google Maps, most people do. You have the option to log into your own account and then be able to do a lot of things that you can't do unless you're logged in. And of course, you can log in clicking on this and go into your login, or there's other things you can do. For example, you can change screens to your mail and so forth. You can slide this out of the way. In this case, there it is right there when you click on it, so you can get a better look at your screen up here. And I love it because you got the little man that you can bring up here and drop him and be able to see, whoop, a weed in your yard. I'm going to swing around and see an old picture of my house that I bought 18 years ago. And I think this was probably from 2 years before, so they haven't come down our street in a long time to go ahead and make changes and so forth. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back using this button to get back. And what we've covered is all the popovers and adding things. Now I'm just going to pop over here to cover a few more things. There is a list view for the maps, and you can say portal view, and it'll take you back in from that screen. And you can navigate to those different things like the map portal. That's another way to find the map portal and get the information. As you notice, it will pop back up just where you left off with a fresh screen where you left off with the right information and address in it. So it's not something you have to add from another location. Okay, well this pretty well covers the whole application. It's very simple and very feature filled, so there's a lot of things you can do with it. If you see where you want to have things added to it, you can contact me, and what I can do is I can modify the actual application for you to add specific things you're looking for. Since we do custom applications and design them, our customers are always looking for something, a new capability or something around that to go ahead and make the application a little nicer. Now, if you want to leave the application, remember, just use the logout on a browser, on an iPad, an iPhone, or the desktop to actually close the application on the thing. Now, on an iPad or iPhone, you have the option to double-click the round button and go to FileMaker, and it uses a different thing called FMGO. Now, I have to explain, FMGO is something that allows you to use this application on your iPad and your iPhone. I give tutorial things, and I'll show you actually how to do it. It just takes a few minutes. So once you have the application, I'll be telling you how to set up a free app called FMGO on your iPad or on your iPhone so that you can utilize this application on those two devices. The desktop is a separate app. It's also for Windows and Mac. So you have to actually have a runtime for your desktop. It has a folder with the items that allow you to run this particular application. Okay, if you have any questions, you can always go up to Do Action, come down and say Tech Support and click on that. It'll bring up my website, and you can start a chat with us to get help, or you can go to the videos that we have on this application to get a tutorial to walk through and see everything. Okay, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to help you. Thank you.